like it.
I know, I want to borrow it, but
235 degrees.
welcome everyone. Good afternoon. Today is March 25th, and this is the Administrative Committee regular meeting. First item of business is to approve the minutes from March 11th.
So moved.
Yep, look good to me.
All right. Minutes are approved. Moving on, next item is clarification of the fiscal year 2018 CAFR with Gary.
Thank you. We're just clarifying the comprehensive annual financial report was incorrect in one instance, and it has nothing to do with financial health of the city or anything else. The report was accurate, except the Moscow Urban Renewal Agency, its results of its audit are reported in the city's audit because the URA is deemed to be a component unit of Moscow city government, which kind of goes against what the legislature has set up, that they are totally separate. But for accounting purposes, they're reported as a component unit. Coincidentally, Presnell Gage, who does the city's audit, also does the URA's audit. And the numbers from the URA audit are merely supposed to be placed on this one page in the city's audit because it's a component unit. In going through and comparing everything, it was determined that the auditors neglected one number in preparing the summary of the URA's audit. That was a $28,000 debt service payment that was not included. It was in the URA's audit, for some reason didn't go into the summary. So they changed that. We're reporting it out today to let the council know that it's a Scrivener's error. It has no material, it's not material to the city's audit, but we need to report it and have the committee recognize it is a Scrivener's error. It's already been changed. We have submitted the CAFR to the Governmental Finance Officers Association for consideration for the award, as we have 15 years in the past. So we're just looking for the committee to recognize the Scrivener error and that it's been corrected.
And then I know you all already talked about it, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
and I'm glad somebody was heads up and caught it, which is the more important part.
So I moved to approve the correction to the comprehensive annual physical financial report.
All right. Put it on consent
Yep.
agenda.
Yep.
Okay, next item is the A Street Stage 2 project construction schedule revision. And is Tyler? Yes, Tyler Palmer.
And
Oh, Kevin's here. Hi, Kevin.
I got backup.
instead
Mrs.
of going it
Sullivan,
alone.
Mr. Becky, Mrs. Bonso, we're happy to be here. Not as enthralled about the item that we have before you this afternoon, but it's part of doing business. We're here to talk about the A Street project. We have, as you all are aware, we had anticipated the A Street project. Well, we had hoped that it would have been out to bid and bid awarded by this point. That has not happened through a series of events that included some software changeover, some staffing changes between LTAC, between ITD, between the construction side and the inspections or the design review side. Long story short, as we worked through this process, we became more and more concerned when the project didn't go out to bid, which culminated in Kevin and myself having some conversations with LTAC as they were moving forward to go out to bid. Best case scenario with a bid opening in mid to late April, and the project's start date was between the middle of May and the middle of June. So basically there would have been 3 to 6 weeks to mobilize on a very large project. Our geographic isolation makes these types of projects difficult. We really have to get on somebody's schedule and get on their schedule early so that they can plan on being here, especially in order to get good prices. So our concern was that at this late date with their bidding, that we were likely to see one of two things: either just non-responsive bidders, or we would see prices that would be exorbitant. LTAC had expressed that they would be willing to bid it and then bid it again if we thought the prices were high. We felt some concern about that because in the past when we've done that, it kind of sets a threshold for pricing, and then when we rebid, we can see the price. Rather than someone sharpening their pencil and starting from scratch, they'll just throw a same number at whatever the item is, and we end up with inflated costs. And so we really came to the conclusion after discussing this with City Supervisor Gary Reedner, Mayor Lambert, that it was probably the best, in the best interest of the city of Moscow to delay the bid on the project and delay the construction to next summer. This allows us to do a few things. One, we're able to get on a bid early. We can bid in the late summer, early fall. There's a large quantity of ITD work going out at that time, and we may benefit from the volume of work in the area. It also will allow, obviously, somebody to have the time to plan, prepare, and mobilize for this project. One of the things that we hope to be able to do with that is to push the franchise utilities to do their work this summer. It's a really tight right-of-way in there, and there's a lot of things that are going to be going on when this project starts: utility work, right-of-way work, retaining walls, et cetera. And so if we can get some of that initial work out of the way, it can simplify the construction process for next year. And if the bidders know that that work is being done before they arrive, it can even impact costs a little bit. And so we recommended then that we go that route. We think that's in the best interest of the city. LTAC, we had some conversations with LTAC and indicated that this was something that we'd probably rather see happen this way. They had asked for a letter from the mayor indicating that that was the desire of the city of Moscow to see that happen. That letter has been drafted and I believe is in your packets. And so that draft letter is a letter that we hope to send down to LTAC. We would like to get it down there relatively quickly. We don't want them to feel pressure, have some administrative staff look at that down there and say, hey, let's rush this, let's get this out. We haven't heard anything from Moscow, get it out to bid, get it off our books type of a thing. And so that's why we met with the Public Works Finance Committee meeting directly before this meeting. And we're here with you all this afternoon with the idea being that with approval, we would then have the letter signed by the mayor and sent tomorrow, and then there would be ratification at the next council meeting of that action. Kev, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, that's all of it, really.
As I mentioned, Public Works Finance, the funds that have been allocated for this project we've checked, they're secure. We can proceed next year. We prepaid $1.2 million for, because the project was going to have to be broken into 2 budget years. We did not want to do the project over 2 budget years. Having that street open and under construction in the winter was not anything we wanted to deal with. So we had them, if we provided the prepayment, they would receive the federal aid funds, then we would get that prepayment back. Those funds are secure. The interest that's being gained on those funds belongs to the city of Moscow. The federal funding is not at risk, so it will continue. And if they bid it this fall, they'll be able to start construction in the 2020 construction season. So it looks to be the best resolution at this point. In the mayor's letter, it says that this is a 30-year project, and we're only on phase 2. So it's taken us a long time to put this together. As we had a Public Works meeting this morning, the folks in that area have been told it's going in the 1919 construction season. Now, because of this situation Tyler described, it won't be. So we will be reaching out to everybody in that general area around the construction, let them know it won't be this year, it'll be next year, but it's being bid this fall. So just to make sure that they aren't making some kind of provisions that aren't going to be necessary during this construction season.
How will you reach them? Do you send them letters? Or?
Our plan is we've identified, so we want to make sure that we hit the area of impact. So we'll do some outreach, obviously some press releases, some social media, broader releases, but then we will do a certified mailing to everybody from Jackson West between 3rd and Residence Street. So basically that whole swath of the city north of 3rd Street out to the west will get a certified mailer, and we will send those to both the property owners and the residents so that we try and make sure we reach all parties living in that area.
I think you're addressing my question. Do we ever put up like a poster out there, on the billboards that say construction in 2020 with what's coming in the neighborhood? Like a placard?
We haven't. We've done some more localized signs, especially in the immediate build-up to projects, and on some of the larger projects, we have done like message boards in the immediate build-up that you'll see that says, this road will be closed from these dates to these dates. But this far in advance, like we haven't done anything that's like, hey, next year this kind of thing would be happening. It would be more in the immediate build-up to the project.
If everything had gone as hoped with an earlier bid, which it did not, that construction would have started in May of this year, so.
Mid-May to mid-June, yeah.
With putting the bids out in the late summer, early fall, would you still be going for a May start date in 2020, or could it be moved up?
Yeah, we're shooting, what we don't want to do is we don't want to interfere with, we're going to interfere with the students on one end or the other. And so we're trying to avoid interfering with them on both ends. There are aspects in constructability that we can look at and say, okay, are there things that can be done within this right-of-way that don't impact or that don't necessitate a road closure? Perhaps some concrete work or some of the retaining walls. The really restraining thing is that it's a very narrow right-of-way. And so there's not a ton you can do. And that's one of the things that there wasn't a really good place to break this project up, because there's just so much to do in such a narrow space that it's best that we just close it off and get after it. So the franchise utilities moved this summer is the one thing that we hope to push through. But there's really not too much else that we can chunk off of it.
Yeah. So you're really not, the May start is kind of preferable,
Likely.
Yeah, I
or
think
disruption.
it's really
purposes.
a jam-packed
Yeah.
area. But as far as the work goes, it's going to be very disruptive. And back last fall, it was, okay, do we want to totally impact that area, that neighborhood in the spring and the fall, or can we push this to where they don't start until the students are gone? At least that segment of the owners or the residents there would not be there, but there's no good way around it, so it's just trying to cut our losses by doing it in the fall rather than the spring.
And the reason we prioritize fall over spring is that there's a large student population that stays in this area. And so in the fall, at least the turnover students that's all they'll know is that, okay, this is under construction. And so we're not catching the other ones off guard on the tail end of their stay here. We get it on the front side of the stay for the people moving in.
It's like a welcome.
Yeah, welcome to Moscow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we give a good farewell to the ones and a less than great hello to the others.
Did you have any comments,
Not
Art?
particularly, just the hour and a half since Public Works and Finance has done nothing to diminish my dismay over our colleagues at the state. But I think staff has done the best that can be done to mitigate the situation to the extent possible. So thanks to the staff, curses to the state.
We need to qualify those curses with blessings that they did work with us to get this built a year earlier, although it didn't pan out. Their efforts were appreciated at the time.
Well, I am glad too that you all have the historical experience to know what is best, how best to proceed, and how pushing the bidding now may not be in our best interest, even though it's an option, so.
There was a fear that if things did not go just perfectly, we would not get it paved this year, and then it would have to overwinter, which there's so much traffic on that street that it would have been bad.
Yeah.
Okay, so I move to approve the change of bid advertisement to this summer. This summer?
Oh, we're approving the letter.
Yeah, well, really all we're looking
Oh,
for
approve the
approval of
letter.
is for the mayor to sign and send the letter.
Okay, I approve.
All right, so think it would be good to put on the regular agenda, just because in
Help
an
educate.
effort to reach more of those people. It sounds like you have a very comprehensive plan to do that, but really.
Certainly
it's-
can.
Yeah.
We will do so.
And you can put block party here 2021.
Yeah, yeah, we're gonna throw a yellow party. Great, thank
Right,
you.
Thank you.
There'll be a nice cul-de-sac for it.
Yeah.
Next item is the self-funded employee health insurance proposal. Gary Reedner, City Supervisor.
Thank you. As council recalls, on May 21st, we put a presentation together, the Murray Group, who is our health benefits consultant, and proposed to the council that it was a recommendation that we explore a implementation of a self-funded employee health insurance program. The reasons for that were that it was a way for us to provide the best benefits possible to our employees and to make them sustainable. We were seeing some increases every year. As I reported back to Public Works Finance Committee, we are seeing good use of the health insurance by our employees, but we're still seeing incremental inflationary increases every year. Additionally, we were seeing increased taxes imposed by the Affordable Care Act, additional reporting requirements required by the Affordable Care Act, which were then being passed on to the city in the premiums that we were paying to Regents Group, our current medical insurance carrier. So at that time, we ran analyses, made some preliminary findings, brought those to council, requested authority to continue to explore putting a self-funded plan together, and to retain Milliman and Company, which is an actuarial firm, to review our past claims and our statistics to determine if it would make sense for the city to do this. As I think I forgot to mention at Public Works Finance, City of Lewiston's had a self-insured or self-funded health insurance employee benefits program for a long time, and it's worked out very well for them. As we mentioned on May 21st, Department of Insurance has some regulations have changed, if you will, making it more palatable to the Department of Insurance and a little easier for a group our size to be self-insured. So we retained Milliman. We went through and throughout the fall of 2018 came up with proposals in the second meeting in January of 2019. We were ready to move ahead. We anticipated an April 1st launch date, and we'd received quotes or bids, if you will, for services to be provided to the Employee Benefits Trust. The Employee Benefits Trust was approved that night. The Employee Benefits Trust takes the place of the full-service insurance company, whereas we make premium payments, the city, for the employee, and half of the employee's dependents are paid directly to Regents Group, and the individual employee pays their half of their dependent insurance also to Regents Group. So when we do that, at the end of the plan year, any funds that are left over belong to Regents. So when we decided that we were going to at least investigate self-insurance, we recommended forming an employee benefits trust. The employee benefits trust stands in the shoes, if you will, of that insurance company, and the employee benefits trust then contracts with Regents Blue Shield, or Regents Group in this case, who will do the administration of the health care plan. We don't do any claims processing down in finance department or any of that sort of thing. We farm that out for a couple of reasons. Number one, Regents Group or another administrative group could do it as well. They're familiar with the process. They are familiar with the federal regulations and privacy that needs to be maintained. So the Employee Benefits Trust, the city would then pay its employee, we call them contributions now, not premiums, into the Employee Benefits Trust, as well as half of the employee's dependent benefits, contributions. The employee then would pay their half of their dependents' contributions into the trust. The trust then essentially stands in the shoes of the insurance company. Part of that is, and I remember the discussion we had on May 21st was, okay, how is the city going to mitigate its risk? So does that mean if we get some really huge claims, the city's going to go bankrupt because we've got these really huge claims? At that point, it was explained to us, and we received bids on what we call, Shouldn't say we call it, it's termed stop-loss insurance. So after Milliman went through, we reviewed our claims. This is 2008. This is 2018. So we've got 10 years of history here. Milliman looked at our claims. We looked at our past history, trying to determine what level of self-insurance was appropriate for the city. At that point, based upon what we saw, it was determined that $75,000 could be self-insured by the city, was pretty much the break point. We looked at some different options. We could have gone as high as $100,000, but we felt that that was taking on too much risk. The $75,000, excuse me, I think I've got another cold. $75,000 seemed to be the amount that made the most sense. We usually had 1 to 2, 1 to 3 major claims per year, major claim being defined as more than $75,000. So we looked at that, actuarially analyzed it, and determined that that was a good place to start. So what we did was we got a quote from, again, Regents Group for stop-loss insurance. Individual stop-loss insurance essentially is that when a claim exceeds $75,000, the city is responsible, or the Employee Benefits Trust is responsible for the first $75,000 of the claim, and then the stop-loss insurance pays everything above that. So that allows us to insure ourselves secondarily on individual claims. Now, you don't expect that you're going to have more than, statistically, 1 to 2, or experientially, 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 major claims per year. If, of course, you have a lot of people with major claims, then all of a sudden, if you're paying the first $75,000, it's going to cost you a lot more than your contributions. So there's secondary insurance, or aggregate stop-loss insurance. So if all of the major claims, or should I say, if the city's payout, if the Employee Benefit Trust's payout exceeds 125% of contributions made in a plan year, your aggregate stop-loss insurance kicks in and pays 100% of all claims all the rest of the year. So, say you have several people who have major claims, several plan participants who have major claims, the most the Employee Benefits Trust would have to pay out is 125% of the benefit paid in. So, individual and aggregate stop-loss. So, in determining this, one of the reasons that we decided that we wanted to go try with or implement a self-insurance program, self-funded insurance program, is because of this graph up here. As I said, this is a 10-year period. If you look here, this is 100%. So if the red line were at the 100%, that means that for every premium dollar paid in, Regents was paying out $1 in expenses. Well, if they did that, that wouldn't make a lot of sense, because whatever they take in, they're paying out, and their costs of doing business, administration costs, profit, taxes, expenses, they couldn't pay. So what they're shooting for is something down in this area. It's usually 85 to 83%. Their margin is 15 to 17% typically. So what they're looking for is 83 to 85% of premiums paid in actually paid out in expenses or medical care, allowing the insurance company to retain the balance. So if you look here, you've got 83%, 82, 74, 107, 71, so on and so forth. So statistically, and this was borne out by the analysis, was that out of a 10-year period, typically, 8 out of 10 years, a group will utilize less than below 100%. In other words, you will be able to expend less than money taken in. If you do that, say this one year, say 69%, in that year, Regents paid out 69 cents for every dollar paid in, and if they're shooting for a 15 or 17% margin, then they just made a lot of money that year, and they put it in their own pockets. Yes.
Do you know what the overall average is in that 10-year period? Like how they ended up?
No, but
No.
this is actually better than the 80% and 20% I just talked about. You only have 1 year that it was above 100%. But even if I would suspect that you're going to be right around 85%, 86% at the most.
Mike,
Yes.
do they have, I'm sure, they do information on the months that they incur most of the
Yep.
costs? And then,
And that's included in this graph.
right. But because of that, with the employee's age, is that how they figured on the 75,000? I guess I just wondered if there was a correlation between younger staff and less for stopgap.
No, it was looked at as the experience of the group, knowing that as people retire, new employees come on, that demographic is going to change. We could probably dig deeper into the information, but it didn't seem like it was relevant at the time. For instance, we know that January, the winter months, typically you spike your experience because people, if they need surgeries, they're going to do it in the wintertime, so they protect their summer activities. And that's kind of borne out by what you see up there. So looking at this, we wanted to make sure that we fell in that same group. So, as I said, we have about 20% of the time we expect we're going to be at or over what has been paid in. But the other 8 years, we should be less than what was paid in. Instead of then the insurance company hanging on to whatever this margin is here, between 100% and wherever you ended up, that money will stay in the trust, and it will be carried over into following years. So it never goes away to somebody's profit. It's retained by the Employee Benefits Trust and can thereby be used for benefits services to the employees later on. Yes,
Can it ever change to be less than 75,000?
absolutely. You can change it from year to year.
Okay.
And chances are you probably want it to be more than 75,000 if you can. And that's because the premium for the stop-loss insurance will be less the more risk you're taking on. So as we're looking at this, the proposal that you see in front of you, if you read the memo that's in the packet, we anticipated April 1st as a kickoff date. We are running into some questions with Department of Insurance that we were working through. No big deal at all, just working through their process. But in that period of time, and we anticipate an April 1st launch date. During that period of time, Regents, who sees all claims come in because they're paying those claims, gave us notice that they were seeing an uptick in major claims. Just one of those things that happens, probably the same thing that happened in this year here, this 107 year, and then in these individual spikes. Okay. When we originally came in January, we had a proposal from Regents Group to provide us stop-loss insurance. It was somewhere around $250,000. I might be off a little bit on that. And that was built into the program itself. Since that time, we've been informed by Regents that instead of the 1, 2, or 3 major claims, and when I say major claims, it doesn't mean that they exceed $75,000 as much as the potential for the claim to exceed $75,000, which causes the insurance company to react and to reserve money. They said instead of the 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 claims that you typically see, they were seeing anywhere from 5 to 6 claims. Okay, again, one of those aberrations, probably exactly the same thing you're seeing here. One of the 2 times on average out of 10 years that you're going to see something like that. So what notice we got from Regents was that, hey, by the way, we're seeing this, we are raising the amount of premium that we want for your stop loss, both aggregate and individual, to the tune of about $150,000. So it's a significant amount of money. So the proposal at this point is we put things on hold for the moment. We would like to put this program in place for the FY 2020 budget. We'll budget it in the FY 2020 budget and implement it probably in January of 2020. In the meantime, Art asked the question at the last meeting, what are we doing in the meantime? We would continue to work with Regents Group to provide the same full-service health insurance that we have now. And then when the transition occurs, we'll give them notice and we'll transition at that time. That's exactly the situation that we had this year. Our plan year is August 1st to July 31st. So had we been able to launch in April, it would have been mid-plan year anyway. Now, again, as Art commented in the last meeting, this is experience. We're seeing a higher level of experience, more utilization of the plan. So the insurance company is probably going to quote us a higher premium for next year. I mean, almost certainly, well, more than certainly, they'll quote us a higher premium. So it's not like by waiting, we're keeping our rates where they are. We will see an adjustment that just as we have in past years. But the point I made at the last meeting, and I wanted to drive home again, is even in that year there of 69%, where the insurance company was paying 69 cents for every dollar brought in, take out their 16 or 15 or 17% margin, they're putting a significant amount of money in their pocket as unanticipated or whatever profits you want to call it. The next year, I guarantee you, they did not drop their insurance rates. If anything, and since I've been here, I think I've had 2 years where it was flat, where we had no increase, and that may very well have been one of those years. But we have never had an incident where the insurance company quoted less of a premium they had the year before. So with that increase in stop-loss premium, our fear is that once that gets pegged, once it gets set, then even if we drop back down to the statistical average, which we will based on our, unless we're running into a huge amount of bad luck in a long sustained program, we should return to the average. And when we return to the average, we want our stop-loss premium to come down too. Now, if we're already buying stop-loss insurance, the insurance company will be, shall we say, unmotivated to drop that stop-loss premium. So we believe if we can wait this next 9 months to see how these claims progress. Some of them may get resolved. People can, you may get some retirements, you may get some people who are cured, and then that all of a sudden isn't a major claim, it falls below it. We believe we'll return to the statistical average, and we'd like that next 9-month period to see if we can get there. And if we can, we anticipate that we should be receiving less of a stop-loss premium increase than what we're being offered now.
And then I know you've worked hard with this particular company. Are there other companies that
Regents?
offer this?
Yes, and we have in the past, when we've had a quote from Regents which was more than what we thought was reasonable, we'd bring it to council, or we would go out and we would get a competing quotes from Blue Cross, Pacific Source, or 2 that we've received quotes from. We could go out, even now, we could go out and pick somebody else to put a program together rather than the one that Regents has made an offer. However, I don't think they will. Risk is risk. And if you've got these claims, another insurance company, unless they're intentionally losing money in order to entice you to come over to their business, which we call buying the business, and in later years you're going to pay for it as they jack their rates. We would just like to see if it balances out first. But yes, if it turns out that we don't believe we're getting a reasonable bid or offer from Regents, we will go somewhere else.
Well, the reason I asked that is at the council meeting when I was asking you about how, do the insurance companies like this? You laughed. You're like, of course they don't. So is this part of the negotiation, do you think, in terms of them saying this aberration might not be an aberration for you all, so?
Yeah, I haven't got into the point where we've negotiated with Regents on that. I don't believe that it's anything but a reflection of risk. They're seeing that instead of seeing 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 of these claims, are seeing 5 to 6. Is that a trend, or is it a spike, an aberration? So like everybody else, they're going to wait it out a little bit, but they've got to insure against their risk. So I don't anticipate it's anything besides just that luck of the draw, that 20%. And we will know more as we get into summer and get into the fall and the budget year. So again, I don't anticipate that Regents is not going to be as competitive, if not more so, because of their experience with us, but we're prepared to go out for bid if we need to.
Does it come down to more of an issue of what happens with these 5 or 6 claims if they do indeed end up being over 75,000? Or is it more like a starting clean on August 1st and what happens from that point forward that they will be looking at?
They will look at it at that time. All an insurance company could do is look at experience. You know, they can't look inside my head and say, well, you're going to have this problem this upcoming year. They judge us all by past experience. So if they see this as a couple of month program and then it drops back down, then it's a lot more advantageous for us to be able to say, look, that's just a spike. It's not a big deal. We're going back to the average. They want to see what the trend is.
That's what I was wondering, like a duration. Do they want
Yeah.
a full year of seeing a reduction?
And they may very well want that. And at that point, I think we're in a much better position to negotiate and say, okay, we've got this many years where this didn't happen. Here it is for a couple of months, and then we're right back to where we were all those previous years. You know, we'll pay a little bit, but we're not going to pay like this is where we're going to be from here on out. But again, Murray Group will assist us with that. We'll come back with regular reports as the situation develops.
And then I was wondering, is there any balance, and I know that there's a health program, you know, because we're on the email list of the things that you all do as a city to help staff stay healthy. Does that make any difference to them in terms of risk with how many people are participating in whether they're doing weight loss or showing that they're walking, all the different programs that have been done within?
Typically, again, it's experience. They will offer these sorts of programs as benefits or as optional services that they provide, because they know ultimately it's going to reduce the amount of payout that they have. But, and I think if we had a more robust program, chances are that'll tip them a little bit, but they're going to go by what the experience is. Because you may have people who don't participate. We have about 160 employees and about 330 participants in the program. So about for every employee, there's at least one other person on the program. And if they don't work for us, we can offer programs, but typically we don't offer programs for non-employees. So yeah, it's pretty complex, and we depend on Murray to help us, you know, kind of guide through that for us.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, I did make presentations to the police, the employee advisory committee, and 2 all-employee meetings to let them know that this is the proposal, and answered any questions they had. They understood what the issues were, and so we weren't going to come to you until they'd been fully advised.
And I think in the early discussions about the changeover to this means of insuring, the employee experience wouldn't be any different anyways, correct? So the delaying shouldn't affect their experience either?
Yeah, that's exactly the point. Whether you pay full insurance or you're self-insuring, risk is risk. So the Regents is paying stop-loss insurance from some other carrier, or they're spreading it among their own group, but that risk is that risk. And it'd be the same for us. So it's a question of just kind of seeing where this goes and then proceeding from there.
I have one other question about it. Do you know how many of those $75,000 claims, let's say that the city would have to be responsible for, would get us to the aggregate stop loss of 125%? Like,
No.
okay.
No. We aren't there yet, I can tell you that. Okay?
All right. Then, are we all, would like to recommend delaying the implementation of the program?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, and this can just go on consent agenda? All right.
Thank you.
And the last item this afternoon is the downtown survey report, and we have Jen Pipner and Kyle Snyder presenting.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. First of all, wanted to thank the committee, we did this at the previous committee as well, for being so understanding last week when we postponed the report. I was really proud of Kyle for finding a glitch in the formula that didn't count for non-response rates appropriately throughout the survey, and really it resonated with me. One of the first citizen surveys I did, I made the same mistake, but I caught it after the presentation, so I was very happy that he caught that. We were able to round out those percentages, and so everything is accounted for properly and included in the survey report. A couple of differences, since we just did the citizen survey report, a couple of differences in the precision of estimates that come with these surveys. We've got the resident survey, and then we've got the business survey. The resident survey was conducted just as our citizen survey is. We take all of the mailing addresses within the city of Moscow limits, city limits. We choose 1,200 individuals, and we chose 1,200 different individuals than the citizen survey, so we weren't doubling up on anybody with surveys. Sent that out, and we, Kyle will go over this in a second, but 293 resident responses were received, which creates our sample for our residents. Is a 24% response rate. With the 293 resident responses received, that did provide us a 91.5% confidence interval. And so with a 5% margin of error, that means that for any one answer that a survey taker provided, we could expect that if we asked the same question of another individual, we would get the same responses within plus or minus 5%. Confidently at about 91.5%. So for the business survey, it was a little bit different. We had, our total population was 276. We mailed this survey to the entire population. We received 110 surveys back, which provided our sample, which is, while it's a 39% response rate, it's a higher response rate than our resident survey, it's still a smaller group in total, so our confidence level for that group is slightly lower at 82%. And I've got to thank Bill Belknap because he can speak this language very fluidly and helped me considerably last week in getting to the bottom of our confidence intervals. So, for instance, 82% probability that if we asked a business owner the same questions we asked our business owner individuals that responded, say they said 50% of them said, I agree with a certain item, then we could expect between 45% and 55% to answer in the same way at about 82%. So, a couple of different factors there. Other than that, Kyle Snyder is our other Master's of Public Administration intern from the University of Idaho. And so he joined us about the same time Frederick did at the beginning of the semester, fall semester, and jumped right into a couple of survey projects that we had available for them. So I really appreciate the amount of data entry and number crunching that they go through to put these reports together. It's time consuming, but oh so worth it. And I think provides a really good project for them to take on in the future as well. So Kyle will report the results, and of course we have any questions or can answer any questions you may have along the way.
Can I just, one little thing? I think, I think you might have just swapped the last thing you said. I just want to make sure that I understood
It's
that correctly.
okay.
So
We did.
just, okay,
What did I,
that 82% would have responded within 45 and 50%.
we are 80% confident that another person would respond within 45 to 55%.
Okay,
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
This is why I talked with Bill a lot about this. Thanks.
You're just going fast.
Yeah, probably.
And I'd just like to reiterate what Jen said. Thank you very much for being understanding about the delay of this presentation and helping me out with this first presentation I'm going to do.
This is your second presentation.
Well, second presentation now, yeah. So as Jen said, there was 1,200 resident surveys sent out with 24% response rate. 276, that should just say business surveys, were sent out with 110 response rate, making a 39% or 39% response rate. The surveys, they provided 3 statements, and then in which the survey takers could mark their either agreement or their disagreement with each question: strongly agree, agree, neutral, disagree, and strongly disagree. And then there were also 2 additional questions in which they could mark either extremely positive, somewhat positive, neutral, somewhat negative, extremely negative, or don't know. and then a comment section for each of the question 2 and question 3 of the survey. Question 1 through 1A through 1C were additional public and private colleges and universities should be allowed in the central business district with an approved conditional use permit. Question B was additional public and private colleges and universities should be allowed in the central business district without an approved conditional use permit. And then 1C, additional public and private colleges and universities should not be allowed in the central business district. For question 1A with an approved conditional use permit, what we saw from the resident response was a 58.36, either strongly disagreed or disagreed with this statement, and then 30.72% either strongly agreed or agreed. To question 1B, without an approved conditional use permit, we saw 82.94% strongly disagreed or disagreed, and 7.51% strongly agreed or agreed, with a 6.14 don't know and or non-response, and a 3.41 neutral. 1C, additional public and private colleges and universities should not be allowed within the central business district. 60.41 strongly agreed or agreed with this statement. 25.6 strongly disagreed and or disagreed, and then 8.53 were neutral, and 5.46 were did not know, or don't know or non-response for the residents. For the business response of question 1A with an approved conditional use permit, we saw 58.18 strongly disagreed or disagreed with this statement, 33.64 agreed or strongly agreed, 6.36 was neutral, and 1.82 was don't know or non-response. Question 1B with an approved conditional use permit, 79.09 strongly disagreed and or disagreed with this statement, 13.64 strongly agreed or agreed, 3.64 neutral, and 3.64 or a don't know or a non-response. Question 1C, additional public and private colleges and universities should not be allowed within the central business district. 60.91 either strongly agreed or agreed with this statement, 30% either disagreed or strongly disagreed with this, and then 7.27 were neutral, and 1.82 was a don't know or non-response. Survey question 2, do you believe the current public and private colleges and universities are a positive or negative feature of downtown Moscow? And with this question, there was 2 comment sections, one where they could list positive attributes and one where they could list negative. For the resident response, there was a 49.49 somewhat negative and or extremely negative to this question. 36.18 was extremely positive and or somewhat positive. 11.6 was neutral, and 2.73 were either a don't know or non-response. And the comments, the top 3 positive attributes we saw were economic growth, more people, and a positive perspective of the WWAMI program. The top 3 negative attributes were parking, the impact of NSA/Christchurch, and loss of tax revenue. The business response to question 2, do you believe the current public and private colleges and universities are a positive or negative feature of downtown Moscow? We saw 47.27 were somewhat negative or extremely negative for the business response, 41.82 extremely positive or somewhat positive, 7.27 were neutral, and 3.64 was a don't know or a non-response. The comment section for this, the top 3 positives were economic growth, more people / students, and building renovation, and then top 3 negative. Oh yeah, question?
I just want to ask a question about the economic growth. When I read that on all of them as the considered, was there explanation about what?
Yeah,
that
people
meant?
would say, I can see more economic growth because of more business coming in, is what their idea was. They wouldn't directly say more people or more students, so I didn't want to mark it in there, but a lot of them said, or they just said positive economic growth, period. They just mentioned that in their comments.
And they defined economic growth as seeing other businesses.
Yeah, so yeah, is kind of, I assume, what they were meaning. I'm not sure.
Okay, we don't know.
Top three negative were parking/traffic, loss of tax revenue, and then NSA in Christchurch. For survey question 3, the expansion of current college and universities would be a positive or negative feature. And again, the comments were situated the same for this question. Residents' response for question 3 was 63.48 were somewhat negative and or extremely negative. 23.21 were extremely positive and or somewhat positive. 9.9 were neutral, and 3.41 were don't know and or non-response.
Can I just follow up? Could it have been not necessarily economic growth, but economic changes?
Maybe.
Well, the words mean different things.
And I think when we were looking at if there was a change, if the change would typically be noted, and I would just made a note that maybe we want to provide the comments in a more listed out form than what we have here on the presentation. But looking at listing it positive on a positive side or a negative side, I think provided a little bit of that background, and economic growth could mean either a change for the good or for the negative, depending on where that comment was located. So I was really happy that we split those two apart, because that's something we run into with the citizen survey, to kind of provide a little bit more of an indication as to what the person was thinking when they put the comment down. So,
Yeah, so you understand what I'm asking. It's just that it's so nebulous.
Yeah, no, I understand. Then the top 3 positives for the residents to question 3 were economic growth downtown, more people and students, and building renovation. And the top 3 negative were prevents future downtown business, parking/traffic problems, and the impact of NSA in Christchurch. The business response to question 3, expansion of current colleges and universities, you saw 62.73% responded with somewhat negative or extremely negative, 27.27 extremely positive and somewhat positive, 5.45 were neutral, and 4.55 were either don't know or a non-response. And for the top 3 positive, we saw economic growth downtown, more people/students, and building renovation. And top 3 negative were parking and traffic, prevents future downtown business, and then the loss of a small community feel to a college campus. And that is it for the presentation. Questions?
Well, I just want you to know, I appreciated when you put the appendices together and you put the side-by-side resident percentages next to the business percentages. That was really helpful, because I was starting to do that as I was reading, so thanks for doing that.
I just want to comment that I think the design of the survey was really good to get the information that I think, as the council, we had asked for, with the, kind of started with one question that was on a commission survey that preceded this, that we felt there were too many questions and we didn't really get the information we wanted. So I think the design of it was very good. I appreciate the time and effort that went into it, and purchasing the mailing list and all of that. So I feel we recognizing the work that went into that, and this is useful information. And I would like to see the comments, maybe, that you mentioned, Jen. Maybe if we could get that before the next meeting, so we're not having to put anyone in a position of interpreting where things fell, and we can just see for ourselves.
Yeah, I know, I understood you had to categorize, but I was wondering how you chose the language.
Yeah, you can definitely provide a list of comments.
Thanks. And I sent an email to thank staff about all the work that went into this, and it's something that we've been grappling with, a particular issue, for several years, and so it allows us to move on something now, which it's really helpful.
One of the other adjustments, if I may, that was requested in the other committee meeting is to include, instead of just strongly agree and agree as a category, is to split up into each of the response levels for those pie charts. So we'll make those updates as well.
Yeah, I heard that. I caught the tail end of that request, and I see benefit to the way you did it also. So I would like to not see it replace, if having both options visible, maybe with the colors.
Or you could do it, but just keep the colors close to the same, so cool colors for one.
I was
pair
thinking that
and
too.
warm
that.
colors for the other, because if you just use the
at that.
defaults, it becomes more
It's-
difficult.
We did
and
struggle with that a bit.
complicated. Also, with the significant digits, keep it down to one significant digit, because when you put in 2 significant digits, that means that you're going to get the same in the first decimal place when you've got the other one trailing. And if you can't reproduce it, keep it to the number of digits that you can actually get, so 60.1 or something like that. When you get to hundredths of a percent, it is meaningless noise.
Can do.
Okay.
So will that be okay to do both versions, like you have it here, and then the split out, maybe with a different shading, or however
Yeah.
you think makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Well,
Thank
my
you.
question was next, after we've discussed all this now and we've been to committee meetings, what do we get to do next?
Yeah, so this will come to full council, the report that we've already received separately, right? So what is the action that will be before us?
Yeah,
at
it'll
that
come to
time?
you next Monday, and at that point, the presentation will go in. You'll have the opportunity to discuss it and give staff direction, what you'd like to have happen. We will have some information for you, be ready to answer questions. If council's direction is they would like to investigate changing the zoning code to take some action, then Bill would explain to you, okay, this is what we need to do. You need to request P&Z or direct P&Z to take a look, prepare it. P&Z goes through their process, it comes back to council, and then you vote on it then. So we can be in a position to help you, give you the resources for what happens next.
Yeah, I think that's what I was asking, how often you all say here your actions, and I guess I wanted
All the options?
yeah,
Okay,
the actions.
okay,
And that helps us with discussion,
got it.
too.
Yeah, I mean, it seems comes down to discussion and decision of if the zoning code is changed or not, based on the original discussion of this that then led to directing staff to create the survey. Now we have that information, so I think we're back to that original question
Sure.
and kind of ready to have that discussion.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And I was just wanting to follow, is it okay if I ask parking?
Sure.
So there was an article in the Daily News about parking, and two people have come to me about this on the Daily News, and I don't go to Facebook very often, but there was, the Daily News had put the article about parking up, and then there were like 136 comments about parking. So since the parking thing, I thought it might be helpful for us. I think we get to now go to our next conversation about parking. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up to you to think that, I think we're going in that direction to solve that too, and you probably already are. So maybe a way for us to talk about it too.
Okay. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Kyle, Jen.
Thank you.
All right, anyone like to entertain a motion to adjourn?
So
Let's
moved.
adjourn.